Alright, well, we're going to start surgery on this AMX and get the motor pulled out. I already pulled the gremlin outside, so I'll probably pull it in back later tonight when I'm done working on this. I just assume have the room to work around the car while I'm tearing it apart. I was just going to kind of go over a few things I like to do before I start pulling motors, and having a real big mess on my hands is I figure out where I'm going to keep this car, because this car is going to probably sit here for the next 5 to 6 months. So I usually try to get it somewhere I know it's, not going to be in my way completely, and I'm going to have enough room to get around it. So and then I usually always keep the back of the car pretty close to the garage door, just enough for me to squeeze around if I need to. But it's going to be kind of a long process. There's probably going to be quite a few videos. I wouldn't be surprised if there's up to 4-hour-long videos about this. So I may upload them at 30-minute intervals. I may upload them at hour intervals, but I'm only going to put videos out when I got parts in and I can, move on to the next stage. So like I said, this is probably going to be a 6-month project, because after I do all the top end, put the new cam that BTR Racing is sending and stuff, car probably isn't going to drive under its own power over to the tuning shop that does all my tuning. So I'll probably have to wait until the weather's nice again to trailer it, or if it'll run good enough to get it over there, limp it over there so they can put a tune on it for the new cam setup and everything. But we'll see. And I'll definitely try to start it up after we get everything done and see if it will run. But more than likely it'll have to be tuned, and that's just how it is. And the other reason that I'm doing all this is because, with this whole car, part of our goal is to see how much horsepower we can get out of a stock bottom end 6-liter. I mean, this motor has 200 and some thousand miles on it, and we talked to a bunch of different racing outfits and a bunch of different high performance outfits, and they all agree that basically what I'm doing with 10 to 12 pounds of boost is about as far as you're going to want to take a stock bottom end 6-liter on horsepower. But they're all pretty much saying it should be putting somewhere between 650 and up horsepower to the rear wheels after this final application, and somewhere between the 700-800 horsepower engine horsepower. So they all tell me that the 4L80E robs about 60-70 horsepower. It's a big transmission, and it takes power to spin all those internals. So just definitely something to think about too when you got your buddy telling you he's got 700 horsepower, but really he's only got a certain amount to his rear wheels, probably 100 less than what the motor's putting out, or maybe a little more. I don't know that for sure, but I know there is a difference in them. So, but I'm going to kind of just start out by taking off some body stuff, that front spoiler. Probably work on getting the supercharger off, and start getting some of the stuff off of the car in this video here. And we'll just go piece by piece, stage by stage, so I can do the most thorough videos as I can, since I never videotaped anything when I built this car. But I think when it's all said and done, it'll be just like building this car for the first time, and it should help out a lot of you that want to do the LS in your Javelin or AMX or however. So, but yep, just shooting this little intro part into this, and we'll get started on some work now. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is get this spoiler off, and right in here, and then here, and then right on the other side. And so there's 4 bolts that hold this thing on. I had to drill these 2 bolts in the bumper, but the bolts at the end there was probably an option for some sort of something or another on this bumper, maybe like a factory spoiler or something, but there was already some little pre-made eyelet tabs on there, so I utilized those for the end of the spoiler there. But I just used some 1/2-inch bolts because that's what I had. I can't get a power impact up in there because camera here. So the water pump for the Supercharger, I just tucked right underneath the spoiler here, and the mount for it I put on the mounting bolt for the spoiler, so that's why I couldn't just put a power tool up in there. But okay, well, I guess you'll get the idea on how to get the spoiler off, so I'm going to work on getting that off and then we'll take a look. So I was down in the salt flats. Unfortunately, my spoiler took some damage, and now I'll have to work on it for next year, but it basically kind of folded over and broke my tabs, and these were never welded. They were actually, I just cut them and bent them over, but they actually broke, and I had to use somebody's welder there at the salt flats real super fast and just tack weld and put the tabs back on so I could get back down to, go down and actually race, because I actually broke this and I hadn't even done any runs yet. So but I'll probably make a video on exactly how I made this out of an old Javelin hood. I've even got the old hood over at the storage, and just something I quickly made like 3 days before we went to Bonneville. I mean like 3 weeks, sorry, before I went to Bonneville, and just something I just threw together, and it actually works pretty good. Believe it or not, just this goofy thing I made, if you're going 100, 112 on the interstate and this isn't on the car, the front end starts feeling kind of loose. Just with having this on the car, I think you got to be up in 130, 140 before you start feeling any looseness in the front end. So, but also all that wind force has caused some wear and tear on this thing. So we'll get it all fixed up in another video. But anyways, so there's the water pump for the Supercharger. It just kind of hangs out under there. And then they're kind of bent up in there, but there's those tabs that were on the bumper from the factory. And then I drilled 2 small holes right there. And trust me, this bumper isn't as good as it looks. It's just a usable bumper, so that's why I drilled holes in it to begin with. But I'll keep it on the car. It looks fine to me, and I don't have any complaints with it. So speaking of the bumper, that'll be the next thing we're going to remove. Alright, well, I took my license plate off. I unhooked the wires to the signal lights already, and then on most all these AMCs there is that bolt and that bolt, so there's 4 bolts, 2 on each side, that hold this bumper on, and we'll get those pulled out. This is kind of a pain in the butt to do it by yourself, but we'll put the camera down and get this off, and then we'll take a look at the next stuff. Alright, so they're 5/8 bolts that hold that bumper on, Guess the next order of business is get the grill off. So on a normal one, there's probably a lot more bolts, but I literally just have one bolt there and one bolt there, and then my grill just stays on this metal valance thing, whatever you want to call that. And then probably normal people have the metal straps, probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 of them on the grill, but I got one, so I'll take the one that I have off, and then shouldn't be much holding this grill assembly on. Just set that there for a second. And just like that, my grill comes off. Yep, there's quite a bit of stuff on there. But it's not really too much trouble to remove it all. It's all just held in there with bubble gum and rubber bands anyway, so. Stick him there. Alright, well, I'm going to take a look and see what the next order of business is, and we'll get back to it. Well, if you have a supercharger, I guess the next order of business would be to probably go ahead and drain the fluid, because supercharger's got to come off anyways. So get that drained, and probably get the hood latch assembly thing out of the way, and get this radiator for the supercharger out of the way, and probably the puke tank, and then probably go ahead and drain the engine cooling system too, and just kind of get everything stripped off of the front here, and go from there. Okay, I got the supercharger radiator out, and all the fluid was pretty easy to drain out. Just pulled the lines off there, and this is the line, this is the upper line to the radiator, and then there's a line coming off the radiator, and that all hooks to the pump and then goes back. But this cobbled wiring mess that I made is the power to the water pump for the supercharger, and it always runs with key power. And I've actually got it kind of hooked into the power for the horn relay there. But kind of did all this in a hurry to get it ready for Bonneville, because the supercharger we put on maybe 2 weeks before Bonneville, so it was a really fast wire it up, get it running, get it tuned type of deal. So before I put everything back together on the final deal, I'm gonna try to clean this up and get some of this wiring out of here, and maybe not have it hooked to the horn relay. Anyway, so the next order of business is drain the main cooling system, get the puke tank out of the way, and take all my bolts out holding my cooling lines to the supercharger, and then unhook them. There's this bottom one right here from both sides, and then that whole little cooling system will be completely detached out of the way off the car, and we'll put it in the what we took off pile. So gonna carry on here. Got quite a few 5/16 or 8mm bolts to pull out, so we'll bring you back here in a minute. Oh, and the screen is just some screen fabric I bought for a screen door, just to keep all the flies and crap out of the radiator. So, and obviously I put that in before the supercharger, that's why I wasn't covering the supercharger radiator. Alright, not that it matters too much, but here's a quick look at the puke tank. So the bottom hose is on this particular universal tank is going I got it going up through the cord support there and just hooking it to the radiator hose, and then I've got obviously my overflow. It was just kind of wrapped around the radiator down there and going straight down to the ground. But just thought I'd give you a quick look at how I did that, and this particular one fits real perfect right behind the grill, just perfect, so no problems on that. So if I knew the part number, I'd let you know. But anyway, so that's where I put my puke tank. I know they generally go up there or maybe over there, I don't know, but it fits really good behind the grill right here. So get my antifreeze buckets out here. I owe our dump, we can recycle antifreeze, so I generally just go and recycle it. I don't try to save it, especially this last batch I put in. I mostly had water in there and try to mix it 50-50, and I don't know what the freeze rate is on it. Not that I'd ever like to price it outside, but I'm just gonna put it in the dump antifreeze and just put all the antifreeze back in it. And the Supercharger, it doesn't matter what antifreeze you use, but I bought all makes antifreeze for it. I'll probably just put Dex Cool back in it. That way, you know, if I have to add antifreeze to the car or it, I don't have to carry I don't have to buy two different antifreezes. One antifreeze will be both cooling systems. So, all right, we're gonna let that drain, and then we'll keep on going. All right, well, while that's draining the radiator still, thought I'd talk a little bit about the cooling system. So I don't remember what fan brand this was, but it's actually a pretty nice fan. It's got this rubber lip on it that seals right to the radiator, and it comes with these all threads so you can move it side to side. And it actually had a thermostat thing on it, but I took that off, and I've actually got a switch in there and everything to turn the fan on. That way I don't have to guess if it's working or not. And then of course I got a fan relay and that cobble rat's nest of wiring there. But anyways, I just got a quick release thing that I made out of some old RC car battery parts. You know, because I recycle a lot of stuff like that and use it on my car. But worked out pretty good. I made just some quick brackets. The brackets they sent weren't exactly going to work on this, but this radiator, I got it off of eBay, and it was like 150 bucks. And you know, I didn't really expect it to last. I just needed a radiator, but I've never had one single cooling problem ever with this car. Never, no leaks on it. It's worked just fantastic. This car runs 160 all day long down the interstate. If you're in town and you're driving it really hard and it's a hot day, the hottest this car has ever gotten is 190 on the temperature. So I really like this radiator. I do recommend it, even though it sounds super dirt cheap. They're probably not all as good as this one, but this particular one's really good. So, yeah, it was on eBay. It's like 150 bucks or something like that. And then also, and I actually have a brand new one of these. I'll dig it up and get the part number out, but I bought this off of eBay too. It wasn't too expensive, like 20 bucks. And it's just this T with this 3/8 pipe fitting adapter in it. And this is the upper radiator hose I made. I need to make a better one of these little end pieces here. But anyways, I got that because I needed a way of connecting my steam vents on the LS motor. So on these motors I got like this little metal tube that runs across, and they just go to each corner of the head. And you know, from what I've been told, that's really important to have those. So I bought this little setup here, hooked that in there. I've never had any issues. Unfortunately, with the Supercharger, I can't run all four corner steam vents, so the two rear ones are capped. And some of the later LS motors or earlier ones, I've seen actually have factory caps on them and only run the front vents, but some of them have all four corner vent setup thing on there. And I used to have the four corner one, but had to get rid of it for the Supercharger. You can't run it, so the rear ones are capped, but the front ones are usable on this. And then this also feeds into your throttle body, but and there's one of them there. But if you're not going to drive it in the freezing cold weather, you don't have to worry about your throttle body freezing up. So I've never ran any heat to this ever again, and I've never had any issues. But then again, I don't drive it in the cold. So, and that's one of the things we're going to address on all these parts we're getting. Is I'm going to get away from the 3-bolt small. I don't know what millimeter that actually is. But that's part of my problems on losing power to the Superchargers. I just don't have enough air volume because this thing is way neck down, and then I got an adapter plate on it that goes from this size up to I think like 92 millimeter, whatever this is. But I'm looking at a 102 millimeter one to put on here. But then I got to figure out the drive-by wire. I have ran into a problem. This is an 8-wire. And I had a bigger 6-wire drive-by-wire, which was probably the 92 millimeter. But yeah, you have to get some expensive little crazy adapter cable to go from the 8-pin to the 6-pin. And I didn't utilize it. I just got an adapter plate and stuck this one on there. And it works fine, but definitely don't get enough air getting into the Supercharger, especially running the 8 to 10 pounds of boost that we're running through it. So. That's going to be one thing we're going to definitely fix on this go around, and got to get the right cam, right springs, and steel head gaskets and some other things on it too. So, all right, well, I'm going to get this radiator ripped out and we'll have a look after that. Okay, my lower radiator hose is 2 hoses connected, making one. So that radiator's got like a I think like an 1.5 inch bottom opening, and then the LS is 1 3/4 or something. So I had to make one hose out of 2 hoses, and I took a piece of exhaust adapter and welded little notches on the ends of it, so I could tighten the hose clamps and assure it would never blow apart type of thing. And that's just my cobbled together radiator hose, lower radiator hose. So I'm thinking about trying to get some stainless steel and actually make a fitted lower radiator hose, something a little bit better looking than that. So my transmission cooler is just right there. Yeah, I had to notch this a little bit, so it is what it is, and there's metal sleeves on top of these hoses so they can't cut into that. Where is that? There it is. And this little radiator that a lot of people ask me about, they always see this and they ask me what that little radiator is for. It's actually for my power steering pump. So to get this power steering pump to fit in without touching the steering box, the original one would, but I mean literally if this motor moved 1/8 of an inch, the belt would hit that adjustment bolt right there. So I got this one. It's a Dorman product. It's a plastic pulley. A lot of people complain that they blow apart and break and they're not worth it. Well, I've never had a problem with this one, but I can tell you for an alignment, you got to go about 1/8 inch further down the shaft for the alignment to be straight. If you just push it on flush with the shaft like the original pulley, it'll actually be out of alignment, and I think that's why a lot of people have them break and a lot of people have problems with them. But I've been running this one since the birth of this LS and this motor, and I've never had an issue with it. But anyways, back to the cooler. It's a smaller pulley, so it's turning that power steering pump a lot faster at idle and stuff. And before I put the cooler on there, it would actually start groaning and making a lot of noises. And then I put this little cooler on there. It's never made a noise ever again. So definitely a must if you're going to put a power steering unit in this, unless you know of a real super fancy setup that you're going to use. The poor man's way of just shoving an LS in there, you're going to want that pulley and put a cooler on it, because you're going to have some problems if you don't. So thought I'd just go over those few little things. My air cleaner is underneath the fender here. That's where I had to go with it, just to make everything work. And yeah, it's just starting to get kind of bare up front here. And I know the proper way of pulling the AMC motors out is through the bottom, but I don't do that. I can actually pull this whole drivetrain out through the top with the transmission hooked on it, and fits in perfect. But we're not going to pull the tranny. We're just going to unbolt the motor, and I've done this plenty of times too. You just unbolt it, and there's plenty of room just to pull the motor. Even with the heads and everything on it, a full dress motor, you can pull it out, even this complete, through this engine bay without hitting or having to bend or tweaking anything. But I got to pull the supercharger off, because I'm not going to try with the supercharger on there. Get the supercharger off. I'm going to pull most of the belt setup off, water pump, alternator, all that stuff off, because I want to do a clean, easy, not a I'm in a hurry, let's break something kind of way. I want to do it the best way I can show you to do it. So I'm going to kind of strip the motor down. I'm going to leave the heads on it, because they are a pain to get out, especially the drivers, because of that booster pump. So, and that's the other reason we're pulling the motor out, because I could do everything that I'm going to do to this engine with it in the engine bay, but it's a pain. And I've already scratched and messed up my fenders leaning over them, trying to get stuff worked on in the engine bay. So, I mean, it's not a big deal to me, but, you know, and I put a couple dents on the fender over there with my palm, just pushing on the fender from trying to get stuff. So that's the other reason we're pulling the motor out, and that way I can go over it, make sure no bolts are loosen up and everything, and make sure everything's still there, because I did notice when I was pulling stuff apart on here, there was quite a few loose bolts, and there's actually some bolts that were missing and other things. Oh, and the last thing about the power steering, so I'm using a van setup, as I've already said, which the computer, the thing that holds the computer in the Chevy Express vans are sweet. They're just a flat plastic thing with a hinge, kind of one of those little wire hinge things, kind of like on your master brake cylinder there, and it just pops in the computer, and you slam that little thing down and it holds it in. Or you can pull that thing and pull your computer out in 10 seconds and be on your way. The truck ones are kind of like an angled weird thing that hook off of the fender well or something, and yeah, I'm not sure how you would get one of those in, but you know, if you're doing this yourself, you might put the computer somewhere else. I put everything in here, so I could leave everything in the AMX wiring pretty much alone and just leave it as its own deal. But the van power steering reservoir, I just drilled 2 holes through this support beam here and bolted it right there. Fits perfect. All the lines fit in there nice and good. They don't rub on anything, and kind of gives the car a little bit of a modern look, really. A lot of people compliment me on my power steering reservoir. They actually tell me that that looks like some sort of factory deal, but it's just something I just threw together to have it in there. So, all right, well, I'm gonna carry on and get some more stuff done here. It's also pretty important when you start pulling wire and power and stuff that's got power to it to disconnect your battery or kill the power. Well, I'd be sad if I burned up a computer or something messing with it. Alright, just giving another quick look here. So unless you're an overachiever and you want to drain the power steering fluid or pull the pulley off and remove it from that whole bracket, I always just tie them right up out of the way and just leave them hanging there. So The water pump is just basically 4 10mm bolts. Unhook my heater core lines off of it and pop that guy off, and pretty much the front of this motor is as bare as it's going to get before I pull it. So, and then we'll start working on our nice long task of getting that supercharger off there. And there's nothing worse than a bunch of antifreeze on the floor, so we'll have to clean that up in a minute. And 6 bolts on the water pump. That might make or break somebody watching this video because I said 4 instead of 6. So there's 6 bolts that hold the water pump on. Anyways, so to start working on the supercharger, the best thing I think to do, because I just kind of slapped it on there in a hurry and kind of slapped it as a kit already together on there. I'm going to unhook the cooling lines, get the reservoir off, get all the cooling lines off of it, which consist of that line, and the cooling reservoir, and then the line going down to the floor. So I'll get all that pulled out of the way, and then I'm going to unhook the fuel system, which it's already on 0, so there shouldn't be any pressure there. Going to get the fuel line unhooked, the fuel pressure regulator unhooked, and then I'll start pulling the fuel rails because I got to get those out of the way. I'm pretty sure to get the bolts holding the supercharger to the engine. So I'll get all those off, and then I got to figure out a way to get the supercharger off with the engine hoist or something. It weighs like 200 pounds. It's super duper heavy. And I used a 2x6 and slid it onto the car when I put this on because I was in a hurry and didn't have my engine hoist here to do anything. So it wasn't very smooth and it was pretty dumb. So I'm going to remove it with an engine hoist. But I'll start tearing that stuff off and we'll take a look again. Okay, so got the cooling system off, and I just took out the few bolts that hold the coil pack assembly on to kind of get it out of the way, and then unhooked my injectors. But as you can see, bolts for the supercharger are kind of buried under there, but if I don't have to remove my fuel rail, I'm not going to. So just thought I'd show you. That's what I'm going to be working against. But I'm gonna work on getting those out and get the fuel system disconnected and get the other side loose, and this bad boy's about ready to come off. Okay, so I got all the bolts out of the supercharger. It is loose now. As far as wires, I go to the supercharger, just the injector wires and your MAF sensor there, or map, sorry, that one's the map. Not really anything else on this side. This is my booster for my booster gauge inside. It tells me how much boost I'm making. And this line right here goes to just a breather on the valve cover. And then this big line just goes to a booster. And then there's another one down there that is capped off, and that actually goes to a evap solenoid. If you're, putting this on an actual factory vehicle that's got all the right sensors and everything on it, then you'd hook that up to the evap system. But I don't have any of that, so it's just plugged off. So I had to make this ugly little gross socket out of a spare socket I had to get the supercharger bolts out. So they're kind of down in there. You can't put a wrench in there, and you can't put a swivel socket in there with a socket. So I made this thing here, stuck it on there, and then took a 10mm wrench and was able to loosen them all. And then I started from the center and just kind of crossed from side to side from the center out, and got the supercharger off. There's a torque sequence for all that, but when we get it put back on, we'll go over all that. So, all right, well, I'm gonna figure out how to get him off of there, and hopefully I don't break anything. Well, supercharger's off. I went ahead and just grabbed it from the front and the back with my hands and picked them up and carried it over there and put it on the stool. I guess it's going to start leaking everywhere. Boy, do I love antifreeze. I love it when it's on everything. I'm gonna mop up here in a minute. So that's what it looks like, or that's what the 6 liter is somewhere. So there's the marking for the 6 liter. They just say that on them, unlike the 4.853, they say 4.8 and 53 on them. These just say 6. So these are the aluminum heads off of the 4.8 on there. I've had a few people ask me, now just going by what I was told on the 3/4 ton Chevy express vans and trucks that had the 4.8 option. They had a different head design for higher compression, to be a little bit more powerful than the plain Jane 4.8. So it's kind of like a high performance 4.8, I guess. And those heads are a little bit better, have a little bit more, a little less chamber and all that stuff to them. So, and they might have a little bit bigger valves. I don't know that for sure. I just know that they told me to put these heads on there, and that have better power and everything for the truck setup. And they've been working fine for boost, but you definitely don't want a lot of compression when you're trying to do boost, because then you're just asking for a ticking time bomb on that point. But those are the fuel rails hanging there as they should. So this is kind of where I'm going to leave it off today. I'm going to get everything cleaned up and get all the stuff kind of organized into a pile. And the next time I start working on this, I'm actually going to pull all the wiring. So I've got this wired to where basically I just pull it all off, computer, everything. So all the wiring, all the tubes, everything will get removed. Cooling lines, everything will just get removed out of the engine bay. So then basically we're left with the block and the exhaust and the motor mounts. So, all right, well, hopefully this has been a better video, and hopefully the lighting's a lot better. I'm trying out some stuff, and I actually bought some editing software and stuff on the computer, so I'll try to make my videos a little bit better than just hokey. So hope you enjoy this, and I'll get another video part 2 out here as quick as I can. I have to go back to work tomorrow, and I'll work on it here and there after work, and hopefully by Thursday or Friday I'll have another video out for the second part. And like I said, we're just going to take our time and get this all out, get it up on an engine stand, and then we can start really looking at some other components and other stuff I've done. And I'll even try to go through all the wiring and show you what pins to delete and what I did to make my wiring harness. So till next time, see you later.